welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron. It all started when a pro-life group released a video reportedly showing a Planned Parenthood official discussing selling the body parts of aborted babies. That sparked protests on Capitol Hill. Now, 3 congressional committees say they will investigate. Dale Hurd reports.
This video recorded last year reportedly shows a Planned Parenthood executive casually sipping wine while speaking with 2 actors posing as reps from a human biologics company about the aborted baby parts.
We've been very good at getting parts on liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see that get out intact.
The video sparked protest on Capitol Hill.
America should not be giving 1 penny to an organization that traffics in baby body parts.
Planned Parenthood's practice of brutally dismembering young and defenseless human beings is outrageous and atrocious enough. And these new revelations seal the deal.
Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life, says this is not new, and he's seen order forms for fetal hearts, lungs, livers, brains, and even eyes.
This is horrific enough, this is offensive enough to the American people that it merits congressional investigation.
3 Republican-led congressional committees have already announced that they will in fact investigate whether Planned Parenthood is selling body parts from aborted babies. House Speaker John Boehner said, when an organization monetizes an unborn child, and with the cavalier attitude portrayed in this horrific video, we must all act. He also called on the White House to denounce and stop these gruesome practices. Planned Parenthood spokesman Eric Ferrero said Wednesday, these outrageous claims are flat out untrue, but that doesn't matter to politicians with a long-standing political agenda to ban abortion and defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood says it's only been donating the body parts at the wish of the mothers, and any money received is to reimburse it for transporting those body parts. Ferrero said women donating fetal tissue for research should be honored, not attacked and demeaned. Federal law prohibits the sale of body parts of aborted babies, but experts say the law is so narrow and weak that Planned Parenthood may still be technically in compliance. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And pro-life groups are calling on Congress to investigate these allegations. We spoke with Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.
This is what we're saying should be investigated. They're going to start getting into the nuances of the law, the nuances of the finances, and there are legal nuances that have to be looked at. But that's what we're saying. We're saying this is horrific enough, this is offensive enough to the American people that it merits congressional investigation. And in fact, that is the latest that we've heard even just today, is that Congress is moving towards having hearings and investigations about this. The Committee on Energy and Commerce and the Committee on the Judiciary are the ones competent to look into this. So what we say is this: Planned Parenthood, make your arguments in front of Congress, because as for the American public, this is disgusting enough for us. As a matter of fact, you may be interested to see, I even have the order forms here that are used for the trading in the body parts. We have on this order form, it's for a whole brain.
Oh, wow.
This one here is for prenatal eyes, 2 of them. It instructs them to ship it on wet ice. One for fetal placenta, liver, heart, and lung. And finally, one for cartilage of leg and hip. This is absolutely astonishing information, but the evidence is right here in black and white. It's pretty clearly illegal, and it's also pretty clear that they are using that precise procedure to get these body parts. Because here's what we have to understand is this, that obviously, if you're going to get an intact heart, for example, well, the abortion procedure then cannot go ahead and crush that heart in the process of doing the abortion. So they have to bring the baby out intact or largely intact. And in order to do that, you can't use the more common method of the dismemberment piece by piece and the crushing of the body. What you have to do instead is something like what a partial birth abortion does, which is you bring the baby out almost to complete delivery and then kill the child just before total delivery. Now, that procedure has been banned both on the state and the federal level. So again, if they want to start making arguments that there's up to interpretation, let them make their interpretation to Congress. But we want hearings on this, and because the American people, as they come to know about this, are rightly outraged.
Father Pavone also said that this is an opportunity for the church. He has publicly asked churches to preach about this topic, saying the church can be a vehicle of repentance and God's mercy for women who have had abortions. And you can watch the rest of that interview on our website, cbnnews.com. Well, thousands of babies in waiting currently sit in frozen storage in labs and clinics across the country. In most cases, they're left over from fertility treatments, but for a California couple, the circumstances surrounding their frozen embryos are more complicated, and they're going to court to decide whether to keep the embryos or destroy them. Caitlin Burke has the story.
In 2010, Mimi Lee found out she had cancer. She and her then-husband, Stephen Findley, decided to freeze 5 embryos because the cancer treatment would make her infertile. When a couple chooses to freeze their embryos, they're stored in cryotanks like these. There's no limit on how long an embryo can be frozen. Some have even been stored for more than 15 years and still resulted in successful pregnancies. 5 years after first freezing their embryos, however, Lee and Findley are in court fighting over what should be done with them. The couple divorced in April, and now he wants those embryos destroyed, and she wants to keep them.
She's very emotional. This is her last chance to have a biological child.
Findley says he doesn't want to have a child outside of marriage, and that Lee is bound by forms signed at the fertility clinic calling for the embryos to be destroyed in the event of a divorce. Lee's attorney is arguing that she has a constitutional right to procreate, and that the forms were not a binding contract.
They checked off the boxes. They were done. They were newlyweds. They had no idea. They weren't even thinking about divorce at that point in time.
The ruling in this case could set a national precedent. In previous cases, the party opposed to keeping the embryos has won. But there have been exceptions for women like Lee, who have had cancer and are now infertile. If Lee loses her battle in court, there is another option for the embryos. Organizations like Nightlight Christian Adoption Agency have programs that allow couples to adopt frozen embryos that would otherwise be destroyed.
We believe that life begins at conception, which means as soon as the embryo is created. And for many of these, or for these embryos, they've been placed in frozen storage, and that process of developing, being born, growing into adulthood has been halted and interrupted.
A ruling from the San Francisco County Superior Court judge is expected over the next several weeks. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
A group of nuns must choose to violate their faith or pay massive IRS penalties if they don't provide contraceptives. The U.S. Court of Appeals ruled against the Little Sisters of the Poor, saying that participating in the government contraception plan is easy. A spokesperson said, "We simply cannot choose between our care for the elderly poor and our faith, and we should not have to make that choice because it violates our nation's commitment to ensuring that people from diverse faiths can freely follow God's calling in their lives." Well, porn is just prostitution with a camera. That was the message at a Capitol Hill briefing that showed ties between sex trafficking, prostitution, and pornography. As Paul Strand reports, experts revealed an America where the majority of men consume porn and where it's making for an ever more violent culture.
Porn is an often scary, toxic wasteland these days, connected to prostitution and sex trafficking, and often is violent and victimizing. At this Capitol Hill Symposium for Congress, experts talked about what researchers see these days.
When they studied 50 of the top-selling, top-watched scenes in porn, 90% of them had some form of sexual, physical, or emotional violence against women.
Just as cigarettes are poison for the lungs, researchers are finding pornography is poison for the eyes and the soul and the sexual conscience.
All of these forms of sexual exploitation are not happening in a vacuum, but really are connected, and pornography is one of the root causes of this.
Porn users should know
90% of prostitution is online. Traffickers advertise women for sale using pornography today. It's a way to traffic women.
Users get hurt too. Cornelia Anderson fights adult and child sexual harm. She says many adults describe porn ruining their real-life relations.
I'm looking at that and I'm getting aroused by that. And I suddenly find I can't be aroused by the real thing, by the real person.
It can especially mess up children, who these days are first exposed to adult pornography and perversions at 11 or 12.
Unprotected sex, sex with anybody, multiple partner sex. Not only do they not know how to process that very well, but they begin to believe that this is how they're supposed to behave when they go on their first dates.
And then there are those in the pornography.
The same things happen to women who are pornographized, trafficked, and prostituted. They're recruited in many of the same ways, the same kind of violence and coercion. Channel them into the sex industry.
We are seeing increased demand for prostituted and trafficked women and children, increased child sexual abuse.
Many people think pornography is just a private, harmless activity. But as this symposium showed, pornography has ties to prostitution and sex trafficking, and the harm goes wide and deep across the society. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Coming up,
there's 26,500 indicators of a warming planet all around us, many of them in our own backyards.
Is it an environmental fad or a reality we're faced with? When we come back.
So, where can you go to find encouragement? Be a part of a prayer community, grow in your faith, watch inspiring videos, and win prizes for free. The MyCBN app, a great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The MyCBN app.
Climate change is one of the most contentious issues of our time. Many conservatives and Christians don't agree that it's caused by humans or that we can affect the Earth's warming or cooling. Paul Strand talked to a high-profile Christian couple who believe that climate change is a huge danger and we have a duty to fight it.
This may come as a surprise to many. Two of the more respected believers in climate change are evangelical Christians with conservative leanings, a popular pastor, and his wife, a scientist time-named one of the 100 most influential people in the world. And Katharine Hayhoe's influence is growing here in Washington and with audiences both secular and religious across the world. Because this particular Christian's job adds weight to her contention, there's overwhelming evidence of climate change.
There's 26,500 indicators of a warming planet all around us, many of them in our own backyards.
Hayhoe heads up the Climate Science Center at Texas Tech.
We see our plants and our flowers and our bushes flowering earlier in the year. We see birds and animals and insects much further north than they've ever been before. We see that sea level is rising. Glaciers are melting. Our weather patterns are changing.
CBN News talked to Hayhoe and her husband, Pastor Andrew Farley, in his home state of Virginia. Growing up there, he considered global warming an environmental fad.
Whether it's save the whales or hug the trees or eat granola, wear hemp.
Farley and his bride fought over climate science for about 2 years.
And I would even go to climate denier websites and find all the ammunition that I could find and come back to her and say, but honey, what about this and what about that?
The evidence Hayhoe and others had of a definite radical spike in temperatures and carbon dioxide finally got to Farley.
Her determination to show me the facts, and then, quite frankly, going to NASA's website and looking at global temperature over the last 200 years and just saying, look what's happened, here's this spike, it's undeniable. Either all of NASA is duped or, maybe there's some validity to this thing.
The other day on Capitol Hill, some 400 moms and their kids gathered for a play-in protest against climate change and carbon pollution. It was a play-in because most kids are too rambunctious to sit still for a sit-in. Their moms were saying energy restrictions they see as reasonable could reduce some 150,000 asthma attacks a year among children and up to 6,600 premature deaths. It's concern for kids like these and their own that has Hayhoe and Farley anxious to see the world do something.
Often people think that we really only care about this climate change thing maybe because of the polar bear.
But Hayhoe says global warming is hurting, even killing thousands of people now, like causing stronger, longer heat waves.
In 2003, there was a heat wave in Europe that led to 70,000 premature deaths. That's 70,000 people died who would not have died otherwise because that heat wave was so extreme.
and stronger frequent rainfalls leading to more flooding.
The air is warmer, more water evaporates out of the ocean and lakes and rivers. When a storm comes along, as it always does naturally, there's more water vapor available for that storm to pick up and dump on us. We're also seeing that hurricanes are getting not more frequent, but stronger because they get all their energy from warm ocean water.
And in the future, she sees trouble coming for millions, especially those on coastlines.
There are nearly 300 million people who will lose their land as sea level rises this century.
Her frequent public appearances, reasonable arguments, and down-to-earth style have led some to say Hayhoe's the best communicator about climate change in the world.
She is at the intersection of science and faith. She's bringing her expertise in the science field, and she's bringing her faith in Jesus Christ, and she's saying, hey, Christians, this thing, this time is actually real, and we need to be doing something about it.
Hayhoe works to rule out natural suspects that could warm the earth, like the sun has done in the past.
For the last 40 or 50 years or so, the sun's energy has been going down while our Earth's temperature has been going up.
How about the natural cycles that happen over centuries?
The next thing that should be happening on that time scale is another ice age, but we're getting warmer and warmer.
As she points to her number one suspect, you see the evangelical in this scientist and child of missionaries come alive.
When we burn coal and oil and natural gas, it releases that carbon trapped in those fuels into the atmosphere. And in the atmosphere, we already have this amazing natural blanket that God has designed for our planet that keeps us almost 60 degrees warmer than we would be otherwise. When putting all that extra carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, we're adding to that blanket. We're overheating. That's what we're doing to our planet.
Pastor Farley says Christians are scripturally bound as God's stewards of the earth to take action if two things are true.
Is this happening, and are we contributing to it? And those answers are yes and yes.
Hayhoe suggests fighting globally for practices and methods that reduce carbon emissions and then reducing your own carbon footprint. You can start simply.
If every home in the entire United States replaced just one light bulb with a new LED, that would be like taking 1 million cars off the road. And we would each save $30 in electricity over the lifetime of the bulb, even taking into account the fact that the bulb costs more than a regular one.
Then just keep encouraging yourself and others to reduce carbon output. Like with commuting. Mix it up sometimes. Work from home, carpool, take public transport, or bike. I've been commuting like this happily for 42 years now. And buy locally grown or made. Insulate, recycle, compost. Even if Farley and Hayhoe are wrong about global warming, you'll at least make for a cleaner, healthier planet. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Up next, it's one generation's workplace dream and another's nightmare. See why more and more millennials are taking charge of business. A power shift is underway in the workplace. The generation known as millennials are using their tech-savvy skills to quickly climb the corporate ladder. And as Caitlin Burke reports, the ride can get pretty bumpy when they're put into positions of authority over their older co-workers.
A decade ago, the idea of seasoned professionals being managed by someone half their age seemed like a dream to some and a nightmare for others. Today, it's becoming the new normal. Many companies realize that younger Gen Xers and millennials bring a distinct set of skills to their operations, skills that matter most in this changing world.
Millennials bring a unique talent in terms of their technology savvy, their ability to absorb change quickly, and these are very useful skills that companies need right now.
These Gen Xers and millennials have the ability to work 24/7. And I think what they bring to the table is the ability to interact with anybody, to do whatever they want to do, almost any time during the day or night.
Knowledge of all things digital stands out to companies needing to compete in that arena. That helped seal the deal for Austin Kellerman, who took the job of news director at Little Rock's NBC and Fox television stations. At only 31, he was the youngest news director the stations had ever hired.
A digital push was a big part of it. That's a big push in the company right now. Digital, through the web, through social media. And I think social media is just one of those things I've always been passionate about, and so something I wanted to kind of bring in to help put my stamp on what KARK and Fox 16 would be in the future.
But bringing in someone so young to lead older employees can often be a roadblock to positive change.
Their previous boss was a little older than I am, and they walk in, and at the time, you know, here's this 31-year-old and he's going to be my boss? I've been in the business for 20 years. I should be able to tell him what to do. Now, I didn't get anyone who said anything like that, but I would imagine that's what they were thinking.
This generational shift is just beginning as the workplace gets younger and younger.
And this is a strategic imperative to use millennials as leaders in the workforce because of the skills they bring.
Both Torrance and Klein say this new office transition can be a smooth one, as long as communication and respect are part of the relationship.
Those younger millennials need to help those older employees understand what it's like to work with them. The baby boomers and traditionalists need to understand that they need to let the millennials and Gen Xers do their thing. Don't worry about how they're doing it. The bottom line, their productivity, is the most important.
Kellerman says his leadership style combines things that come naturally to him as a digital native with concepts he's learned from older employees and mentors.
I think being a younger person, a younger manager, I've always tried to, approach more experienced or older employees in that regard and just make sure they understand that I value them and truly use them as a resource.
Kellerman is successfully leading both KARK and Fox 16 into the digital-first future of news.
Digitally, our footprint is much larger in terms of Facebook followers, Twitter followers. One interesting trend we've seen over the last few years is now people don't go to our website anymore. They come to our website through Facebook. They don't visit the homepage.
The risk companies take to bring in young managers may result in growing pains at first, but it's a generation equipped to step in. Some parting advice from the experts: never doubt your abilities, and remember, there's always more to learn. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Little Rock, Arkansas.
CBN's Orphans Promise is helping provide clean drinking water to children in Ukraine. For months now, many children have been living in a war zone in eastern Ukraine without adequate access to water. Orphans Promise partnered with a local church to dig a well to supply them with life-giving water. Teams have also been providing food, clothing, and other relief materials. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international. Well, that's all for this hour of the CBN News Weekend, and you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com, and stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless.